Okay, this is going to be a quick lesson on the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell types. Let's start by showing you 4 images. You'll see on your screen right now they're labeled A, B, C, and D. What I'd like you to do with them is be able to label each one as prokaryotic or eukaryotic. Go ahead and take 5 seconds and match them up. Now, can you explain why you've labeled them? And are you sure they're correct? If you have questions about either one, but hopefully by the end of the lesson you'll be able to accurately describe whether they're prokaryotic or eukaryotic and why you've chosen that. One of the requirements that we first look at is whether or not the cell has a nucleus. If you look at the eukaryotic cells on the left-hand side, you'll notice that a membrane-bound organelles containing its DNA right there in the center, we call that a nucleus. So yes to nucleus for eukaryotic cells. Take a look at the cell on the right-hand side. The right-hand side cell is lacking a nucleus. You see it's called a nucleoid. It's really what the DNA is, just hanging out there in the cytoplasm. So we say no to a nucleus for the prokaryotic cells. So in terms of answering the question, does it have a nucleus? Eukaryotic cells would have to say yes. Prokaryotic cells definitely say no. Another criteria we look at in terms of classifying them into eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells or telling the difference between the two. Eukaryotic cells, you can see the one on the left-hand side is a eukaryotic cell. Look how much bigger it is than the simple prokaryotic cell. Almost between 10 and 100 times larger are eukaryotic cells than prokaryotic cells. So there's another difference that we see between the two. We also look at overall complexity, as we talked about with the eukaryotic cells, that the nucleus is one of the membrane-bound organelles, or a way of dividing up the inside of our cell. And that's not the only one. We see membrane-bound structures here. That's a mitochondria, and then the endoplasmic reticulum here. And then we have maybe the Golgi apparatus towards the outside here. This little swirly thing here, maybe that's a lysosome, or maybe it's a vacuole. But in either case, we're dividing up the inside of the eukaryotic cell, which makes it a very complex cell. If you take a look at the prokaryotic cell, besides the cell membrane, which is on the inside of the cell wall here, besides that, they really don't have any true membrane-bound organelles. You'll see ribosomes. That's common to both, although those are really not true membrane-bound organelles. So overall, the complexity for eukaryotic cells is very complex. Prokaryotic cells are pretty simple. Now, let's take a look at some examples. Where can we find these types of cells? The top picture, right here, that is an example of a bacteria. Bacteria are typically small, simple cells. They're usually unicellular, which means that they're made up of one cell. They are a typical prokaryotic cell. As a matter of fact, they make up a kingdom called the prokaryotes. This one in the middle is a fern, which is a plant cell. Now, if you look at a plant, they're typically a larger, multicellular, complex type organism. So we would naturally assume that they are eukaryotic cells, and true enough, they are. In our duck, we could probably say the same thing too. So our duck would be found in or having prokaryotic cells. So those are some examples. Plants and animals tend to have eukaryotic cells. Bacteria have prokaryotic cells. Typically, the more simple the organism means prokaryotic. And then finally, I asked you at the beginning, could you match up the correct picture to a correct cell type? If you take a look at it on your screen, take 5 seconds, see if you can label A, B, and C as correctly as prokaryotic or eukaryotic. If you chose prokaryotic for picture A, you would be correct. You notice that there is no nucleus. It is a smaller looking cell, a lot less complex, and you can see the little ribosomes dotting the inside. If you labeled eukaryotic as for B, you would be correct. Look at all the complex internal parts that you see there, pretty typical of a eukaryotic cell. In fact, that is a plant cell. And if you labeled letter C as a prokaryotic cell, you are correct there too. So we've reached the end of our presentation. Hopefully now you'll be accurately able to describe the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells and be able to give some examples.